Trying to find a quiet place in the house under quarantine to record this. So, um, I've been thinking about the coronavirus and the losses and the impact that it's having on people and will have on people. And the thought for today is that there is something that is the most important thing in life that the coronavirus can't take away, and we can press into that no matter what happens to us and have the life that we have always wanted. My granddad at my grandmother's funeral walked up to a coffin and in a voice breaking with emotion said, "I love you, Nanny." My aunt, half joking, said, "Silly sod, why did he wait until she was dead to tell her that he loved her?" Now, my nan, a few years before she died, told me that she knew my granddad loved her, but that he'd never said it to her. And she said that was okay. But she also said that she wished that from time to time he had told her. Now, my granddad's public declaration of love was sweet and tragic at the same time. Some things are really left too late in the face of death. Now, we know the old adage that no one on their deathbed says, "I wish I'd spent more time at work." Death brings life and what life is really about into perspective and allows a right assessment of life. COVID-19 virus-related deaths are in numbers we can't really get our heads around. And they bring something very close to home, something most of us are very good at avoiding, ignoring the fact that we're all going to die. The wisest people in history have always understood that one of the secrets to a good life is to contemplate its ending. For only by considering the end of our lives can we truly decide what life we should be living and is worth living. Ian Byock, a palliative care doctor, has looked at hundreds of patients at the end of their lives. Now, for those patients, as they assess their lives again and again, only one thing emerged as essential: relationships. Not how big their house was, or how much money they'd made, or whether they'd retired late or early, or what car they drove, or how many holidays they'd taken. The sole measure of life at its end was relationships. All regrets of how their life had been lived were around the quality of the relationships they had. Our relationships are the very substance of life and the measure of life. So why do we focus instead on our circumstances to the detriment of our relationships? We stay busy and distracted while investments in our partner and our children, if we have them, atrophy. We think having more and living somewhere else, bigger, better, will make us more happy. And it doesn't, because we take ourselves with us into our new circumstances. We also end up in a poor relationship with ourselves, disconnected from who we are, who we were meant to be, and those we were meant to be with. The regrets of Dr. Byock's patients about their relationships clustered into four things, just four things that were the measure of relationships for a meaningful, well-lived life. I wish I had said, "Please forgive me." I wish I had said, "I forgive you." I wish I had said, "Thank you." I wish I had said, "I love you." Four simple phrases that nurture, sustain, create and translate us into the very fabric and meaning of life. Yet it seems they are the most difficult things to say based on how many of Dr. Byock's patients had left them unsaid by the end of their lives. My mother was the most abusive person I ever knew. Violent, capricious, regularly inflicting emotional and physical harm on my brother and me. One beating I remember was when she misplaced a key, and as was her wont, she blamed me. I then received one of the biggest thrashings of my life for daring to suggest maybe she had put it down somewhere different to usual. I found the key where she'd left it under some sellotape when she'd returned from the shops and put down the key and her shopping. I still pause when I pick up a roll of sellotape expecting a key to be under it. I caught the look on her face, the realisation that it was indeed not me but her that had misplaced the key. At that moment, as a young, I think probably pre-teenager, I thought to myself, all you have to do is say sorry. My mother ended her own life many years later, having never once apologised to me, ever. Before she committed suicide, we were estranged. Her abusive behaviour, something I had to set boundaries around for myself and my children. My last words to her not long before she died were, "I love you, I forgive you, and thank you." Those I meant deeply. I also said I was sorry for anything I may have done that had hurt her. Those words cost me deeply to write them. The comedian Lily Tomlin observed, "Forgiveness means giving up hope for a better past." I was reconciled that my mother was so broken she was incapable of facing the past she had created in her and my life. I had to let her and that go. I will admit to still struggling from time to time as my life has emerged from the lack she created, with a wish that more care and resources had underpinned the life I have made. My mother eventually ended her own life, writing a letter to me to explain why. In it she blamed me for taking her life, that I was a terrible son, that after all she had done for me I had been so ungrateful, I was a disappointment to her in all I had done and been, but yet despite all that she loved me. A therapist several years prior had asked me what I saw as the trajectory of my mother's relationship with me. I replied that I expected her to use her dying breath to curse me and harm me. My predictions came true. At her funeral, people from the church she had joined a few years before dying said kind things about my mother, how she was loving and generous. Friends said to me it must have been painful to hear that in the face of my experiences of my mother. And the truth is she could be very loving and generous. I'd seen that underneath the overlay of chaos and violence. Yet I was able to see something else, because as I listened to people describe her, I felt the Lord say to me that this was who she would be in eternity. All the abuse and loss and regret would have fallen away. You see, my mother had become a Christian at the end of her life, and from what her church told me, she really did have a relationship with Jesus. The most important thing at the end of my mother's life was that she had connected to the most important relationship of all, Jesus. I could forgive my mother because I had met Jesus many years before. Jesus had remedied and taken upon himself everything bad about my mother. As I write this, it's Maundy Thursday. As I read this, it's Maundy Thursday, the day before Good Friday. My friends, when they hear my past and hurts, are good friends. I can see that they wish my past had not happened, that they wish they could take some of it away. Like we all do for friends we love, we wish we could take upon ourselves some of their suffering. We can help our friends, but really there is much that they have to endure on their own. But I realised a long time ago that Jesus was the one person who entered my sufferings fully. He took all my suffering upon himself, and he took all of yours and that of every person in history. Those things kill us inside and our lives. We know this. Yet Jesus took all that suffering upon himself. This is what killed him on Good Friday. His death carried to the grave everything that needs forgiving and every lack of love. So this Easter, I want to encourage you with two things. Nothing you face now will be the measure of your life when it ends. You won't be saying, I wish the COVID-19 virus had not happened. If you live a little longer, you will at the end of life look back and ask, as others always have, who have I not forgiven? Who did I not say, please forgive me to? And who did I not thank? And who did I not declare my love to? The good news is COVID-19 does not stop you doing those four things now. Read the book by Ira Byock. It's called The Four Things That Matter Most. There's a link at jasonswanclark.org in the article to it, or you can just Google it. Read the book for more inspiration and go and put that into practice. Nothing the coronavirus is doing to your life right now can stop you engaging in the four practices for the most important thing in your life, your relationships. But the other thing I want to encourage you about is this. If relationships are the most important thing for the measure of life, how is your relationship with Jesus? For this Easter, we are reminded that the source of all life and relationships, God himself, the Father, sent his only Son into our world and into our lives. His love and forgiveness in Jesus unlock the deepest relationship forces of creation. So this weekend, will you and I speak to him and say, forgive me and thank you and I love you? He's waiting to tell us he forgives us and loves us, needs us and wants us, is with us and cares for us and will always be with us. You see, relationships are not just the stuff and measure of this life now, but also the one to come. For relationship with him, Jesus, will carry us through all we face now and even beyond death itself.